Chris Stapleton's All-American Roadshow. July 25th at Ford Idaho Center Arena with special guests Alan Stone and Nikki Lane. Pre-sale for City Card members now through Thursday at 10 p.m. before the general public Friday at 10 a.m. Buy tickets at livenation.com. New album Higher, available November 10th.
Today on CityCast Boise, we've been inundated with electoral politics this week, and I need a break. Luckily, I have Idaho Statesman's Rachel Spacek and Idaho Capital Sun's Mia Maldonado with me to break down a couple of stories you might have missed this week. We're talking Meridian's affordable housing and a recent win for tribes in restoring salmon. It's Friday, November 3rd. I'm Blake Hunter in for Emma Arnold, and this is what Boise's talking about. All right, it's been a hectic week, but I'm so excited to talk to you both today because you are truly two of my favorite local reporters. I haven't told either of you this in person, but whenever either of you have an article come out, I'm immediately going to click on it, and I'm always learning so much from both of you. So I'm just so happy that you are both here. So thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Thank you.
Rachel, I'm going to start with you. You wrote an article this week about where Meridian stands with affordable housing. So especially in this year, but just kind of since the start of the COVID pandemic in Boise and around the Treasure Valley, we've seen a rise in evictions and requests for assistance with that. And is that true in Meridian too? What's going on there?
Yes, so it is true in Meridian. And, I think in a lot of my stories about Meridian, I always kind of mention that I think for a long time, Meridian was kind of just thought of as this Boise suburb with, lots of working families who own their homes, like their single family, 3-bedroom homes. But it's changing a lot. And one of the ways it's changing is there are renters who are struggling to afford rentals in the city, especially with housing prices still climbing. So yeah, Jesse Tree, I'm sure listeners know all about Jesse Tree. They have been kind of ramping up their assistance to Meridian families. They received this grant from the city of Meridian, and they were only able to help 95 families with rental assistance, but they had 422 families apply. So that kind of just shows you how deep the problem is.
Yeah, absolutely. So a loan company recently analyzed some rental prices from around the country and found that Meridian kind of stood out in some startling ways. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so CashNet USA did a study on, multiple cities across the country. They used rental price data from Zillow, and then average salary data from the U.S. Census to kind of determine how many available affordable rentals there are. And they use the formula that your rent or cost of living shouldn't be more than 30% of your income. So using that statistic, only 17% of Meridian's apartments or homes that were available to rent were affordable to the average resident.
17%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
According to CashNet, Meridian ranks 13 in the lowest percentage of affordable rentals.
Wow.
Which is kind of crazy.
I mean, I don't know anyone who's, maybe under the age of 40 who's living in Boise and Meridian where they're spending less than 30% of their income on their housing. I kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, you're so right. I remember when I was first moving out of my parents' house, my mom had that statistic in her head of okay, you can't spend more than 30%. And for me, I'm just okay, as long as it can come out of my paycheck and I can afford groceries, I think I'm fine.
Totally.
So yeah, you're definitely right that's just kind of unachievable here.
Yeah, unfortunately. And yeah, we'll definitely be keeping an eye on Meridian's housing affordability, because as you said, we kind of think of Meridian as being a lot of just single family homeowners. So I'm glad that we're kind of getting a better picture of that.
Jason Mraz and the Super Band. Live. The mystical, magical, rhythmical, radical ride. Saturday, August 3rd at Ford Idaho Center Amphitheater. Jason Mraz and the Super Band. Tickets on sale now at FordIdahoCenter.com. Jason Mraz and the Super Band. Pick up the new album, Mystical, Magical, Rhythmical, Radical Ride, produced by Live Nation.
All right, let's move on to you, Mia. I know a lot of Boise people, and I especially am keeping an eye on the situation of salmon in the Columbia River Basin. And you wrote a story about a big investment that the Upper Columbia River United Tribes received to work on restoration of salmon. How did this get started?
Yeah, so in September, the Biden administration announced that it would fund $200 million of salmon restoration research to the Upper Columbia United Tribes, which is a group of tribes that kind of relied on the Columbia River before dams. So all of this traces back to 1940 and the construction of Grants Coulee Dam in central Washington. That dam blocked salmon from migrating to the ocean and returning as adults to spawn in their natal streams. The Columbia River used to produce up to 16 million salmon, and in the 1970s, that number was just below 1 million. So there have been efforts to restore those populations, and Idaho and states in the West really pride themselves on being really states with cheap electricity, but all of that
Right.
comes at the expense of tribes that no longer have access to salmon, which played a really important part in their culture and diet.
I wanted to just name the Upper Columbia United Tribes actually formed in 1982, which I didn't know until I read your article, but it's made up of the Coeur d'Alene tribe, the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation, the Kalispel Tribe of Indians, the Kootenai Tribe of Idaho, and the Spokane Tribe of Indians. And so, but I think it's really interesting that this plan that they're working on is very different from the premise of removing the 4 lower Snake River dams that our listeners might be familiar with. We've talked a little bit about before. So what is this specific plan setting out to try to do?
Yeah, so unlike breaching the dams, which means removing a barrier of structures of dams so water can flow through the dams, making it easier for salmon to migrate. This approach is focused on creating fish passages over dams along the Columbia River, so like Grants Coulee Dam and Chief Joseph Dam. Both of those dams are ginormous. They're the top two largest hydropower producers in the United States. So right now there aren't any fish ladders. No fish can make their way up to the dam. All of the fish have to rely on humans to kind of return.
Yeah.
So right now there aren't any fish passages because it's too tall and it would be too cold for salmon to make their way up this. So this agreement is looking into different ways to make it easier for salmon to migrate.
So this plan is a $200 million investment, but it's spread out over 20 years. This is just step 2 of a 4-part plan. What are the tribes hoping to make happen next?
Yeah, so I just want to highlight this plan, the fact that they're only in phase 2 of this 4-step plan. This is going to last beyond probably our lifetime and hopefully help new generations preserve salmon. So hopefully one day those fish will get over those giant dams. But in phase 2, they're going to be working on creating prototypes and just researching ways to get fish over the dams over the next 20 years. And then the next 2 phases will actually kind of make those passages more permanent.
I think in Idaho, we hear a lot about the movement to breach the dams and kind of save the salmon, but the tribal perspective on how, these salmon not being able to get over the dams is like impacting their way of life and, their culture. I think that's such an important part of this story. And I'm really glad you wrote about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, what got you into that? Like, why did you want to take this from this approach?
Yeah, so I've been writing a lot about energy policy since I've started at the Capital Sun, and that is just, it's so intertwined with tribal affairs. Like I said earlier, Idaho is one of the cheapest states with hydroelectricity, but that comes at the expense of all these tribes and their culture. And so I'm just really fascinated by how tribes have really pushed for things in the conservation world that other people and including the federal government haven't been willing to do.
Right.
So this is a tribal-led initiative, and it's a big win because the federal government is acknowledging the fact that they didn't own up to the treaties that they signed with these tribes, and so it's a big win for the tribes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to pivot into election territory. We've been talking about election season a lot on CityCast Boise. I know you two have both been keeping an eye on some local races. What elections are you watching as we head into Tuesday? Rachel, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think, of course, a lot of us who live in Boise are watching the mayor's race. You know, I think it's been really interesting to see how that's played out. But for me, I don't cover City of Boise. I cover cities in West Ada. And I'm really interested in the Eagle mayor's race. I don't know if people have been watching any of the coverage of that, but the incumbent mayor is pretty unpopular with, you know, the annexation of Avamore and some certain things, council decisions that he's done. So he's kind of unpopular, it seems, and running against him is someone who sits on city council. So there have been some like scuffles between the mayor and this guy running against him. Yeah. And then there are the former mayor, Stan Ridgway, is running. So it's really interesting to see, you know, so many players in this election. And previously, I think there were a lot of contested issues in the mayor's race with Avamore and Eagle, but now kind of there's less attention on it. So, yeah, I'm really curious how it will play out.
I have to be honest, I have not paid as much attention to it. So you're kind of characterizing this as like a 3-person race?
Yes. Yeah. So the incumbent is Jason Pierce. Running against him on the city council is Brad Pike. And then the former mayor who's also challenging them is Stan Ridgway. So, yeah.
We'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah. I know maybe a lot of people aren't paying attention to Eagle, but it's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Mia, what about you? What are you watching?
The Idaho Capital Sun, we don't cover city elections. We try to cover only state elections. But one local election I am interested in is Meridian. And that's because since the city exceeded 100,000 people, it's now required to elect city council members by district. So I think some city council members are up against each other. But yeah, if you're a Meridian resident, I would definitely keep an eye out on those elections.
Since Mia mentioned the 100,000 residents thing, just to add, Nampa is also voting for the first time in council districts too. So yeah. 2 cities this year have that.
Yeah, and Boise is for the first time, yeah. I mean, I've kept an eye on the city council elections too. Like you said, there's a race where 2 incumbents that have had like a solid record are having to run against each other. So that's always going to be interesting. But also, I'm really interested in the mayor's race. So you have the incumbent mayor, Robert Simmerson, is running, and he's opposed by Mike Hahn, who if people remember last spring, was one of the leaders of the push to recall all of the board members of the Meridian Library District, which was obviously a very contested affair. Meridian showed out. A lot of residents came out and said, hey, we're not interested in doing that. So I'm interested to see whether Hahn will actually be able to put up a big challenge to Simmerson. I know that a lot of people in Meridian are really coming out and being very vocal, saying Simmerson has our vote. Okay, very last thing. What are y'all doing this weekend? Any fun weekend plans? It's a little bit rainy. It's a little bit chilly. What's the vibe?
Yeah, I can go. So the ski swap is this weekend at Expo Idaho. I used to ski as a kid, and I just haven't since I moved to the Treasure Valley, and I'm really hoping to check out some gear.
And I hear you're taking Evelyn. Is that true?
Yes, my girl is determined to learn how to ski, so I can definitely give her some lessons pro bono.
Gonna find her a rich ski husband? Is that the plan?
That's the plan. I also think she just wants to wear like a really bougie ski outfit.
Yeah. And that's fair. That's absolutely fair. Yeah.
We won't take videos down the mountain, but the pictures at the top for sure.
Yeah, cute. Rachel, what about you?
I'm envisioning with that, like, those Kardashian episodes where they go to Colorado
Yeah.
go skiing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's gonna be you guys. I snowboard, so I might check out the ski swap. We'll see. But I'm mostly planning to just cuddle up with some movies and some coffee and just hang out with my dog and chill.
Honestly, yeah, Rachel, I'm in the same boat. I don't have a dog or a cat, but last weekend was fun. It was a bit of a Halloween weekend, but it's time to just chill out. So, yeah.
Before we go, I want to say, Blake, I love your newsletters. I always, whenever you include my stories, I'm always like, that is so sweet. So I love CityCast newsletters. You should definitely check them out, listeners. Make sure to subscribe to the newsletter. It's amazing.
Well, thank you both again for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to come on CityCast, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. The show is produced by Evelyn Avitia and Grant Irving. I'm Blake Hunter. I write our Hey Boise newsletter with the help of Adrian Gonzalez and Natalia Aldana this week. Our music is by Up Is The Down Is The. If you enjoyed our show today, leave us a review. It helps other people find us. We'll be back on Monday with more stories from around the city. See you later.
What about the cat?
And the cat, obviously.
I gotta defend Rue.
Rue hates you. Why are you defending her?
Oh, wow.
You just broke some news to Mia. She did not know.